Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Let's Read Syrupleaf Live. Yep. I have run out of footage to edit. It is time to start gathering some more. So, nothing to it but to get doing it. I don't really. Well, I suppose this is about the time for the normal crowd to start showing up. Disappointed that this isn't Journey Beyond the Abyss. So, let's get into it. Syrupleaf, Chapter 5, Part 9 The Battle for the Fortress. From the main chamber, I look down the entrance hallway to survey the unfolding battle. Nearly 60 fellow dwarves stand behind me, holding mining picks, rocks, and whatever improvised weapons they're able to produce. Should our champions fall, it is here, in the main chamber, that the rest of us shall make our final stand. As Holistic Detective and Royal W emerge from the corridor into the gatehouse, they are met immediately by 3 spawn charging towards the corridor to the fortress interior. Kennel emerges behind the other 2 champions and makes her way to the front gate, where most of the creatures, including the spawn leader, are waiting. Fighting like a dwarf possessed, Kennel quickly fells 2 of the spawn with hammer strikes to the chest and smashes in the face of a third. The massive spawn leader, its head nearly reaching the ceiling of the great gatehouse, steps over the bodies of its minions to engage Kennel. Holistic Detective strikes down one of the spawn with his hammer. Royal W severs the leg of another and then decapitates the prone creature after it falls over. One more of the creatures stands between the 2 champions and Kennel. Royal W engages it, allowing Holistic Detective to charge forward to support his outnumbered and surrounded comrade, his wife, Kennel. As Holistic Detective crosses to the front of the gatehouse, the body of another spawn is sent flying away, and As Holistic Detective crosses to the front of the gatehouse, the body of another spawn is sent flying away from Kennel and into a wall. 5 of the creatures, including the leader, still surround her. The spawn leader strikes a terrible blow with the flat of its injured claw to Kennel's chest, breaking several ribs. She grunts in pain but remains standing, and retaliates with a powerful hammer strike to the spawn leader's leg. Enraged, the spawn leader crushes Kennel's head with its healthy claw before Holistic Detective can arrive to support. 2 champions remain. I can now clearly see that 7 spawns still remain standing to oppose them. Royal W ducks his opponent's claw attack and counters with an axe blow that severs the creature's head cleanly. At the other end of the gatehouse, Holistic Detective stands to face the spawn leader. The 5 remaining spawn minions are gathered near the entry gate. I can see now that the minions have all been wounded to varying degrees from earlier in the battle. I do not know whether their wounds are the work of Kennel, Luigi's Discount, Lackloss, Fellblade, or another. The injured spawns slowly shamble towards the remaining champions, but are clearly slowed by their wounds. As the spawn leader lunges to bite at Holistic Detective with its terrifying maw, the champion lands a great blow to the side of its head with his hammer. Such a blow should at least slow the creature, but it does not. The leader smashes Holistic's shield arm with his damaged claw, breaking the bone. The spawn leader lunges forward to bite again, and Holistic strikes it in the face with his hammer, smashing its maw and knocking out several jagged teeth. The spawn leader staggers backwards for the first time in the entire battle, but shakes off the blow and fights on. Meanwhile, Royal W has engaged the 5 wounded spawn. He severs the leg of one with his axe, and cleaves its skull with another axe strike after it falls over. He turns, and strikes another of the wounded creatures squarely in the chest, the force of the impact sending its body flying against the gatehouse wall. I should do that again. Meanwhile, Royal W has engaged the 5 wounded spawn. He severs the leg of one with his axe, and cleaves its skull with another axe strike after it falls over. He turns, and strikes another of the wounded creatures squarely in the chest, the force of the impact sending its body flying against the gatehouse wall. Holistic Detective swings a mighty hammer strike at the Spawn leader, but the huge creature, moving with unnatural speed, somehow avoids the blow. Before the champion can recover from his miss, his opponent's claw snaps around his neck, severing his head. Royal W assesses the situation. Only the Spawn leader and 2 of its minions remain. The champion severs both of the legs of the nearest wounded minion, then decapitates the prone creature. The other remaining minion drags itself across the gatehouse floor with its claws, crawling towards Royal W, both of its legs having been mangled by hammer strikes earlier in the battle. It does not present a threat. Royal W turns to face the Spawn leader. The leader lunges at the champion. Royal W deftly steps aside and counters, burying his axe in the creature's left leg. It is a blow that would have easily severed the limb of any lesser creature. The leader lunges at the champion. Royal W deftly steps aside and counters, burying his axe in the creature's left leg. It is a blow that would have easily severed the limb of any lesser enemy, but the Spawn leader continues to stand. It swings at the dwarf with its injured claw, knocking the shield from Royal W's left hand. As the Spawn leader opens its massive right claw to attack the champion's head, Royal W says a quick prayer to Armok and gathers all of his dwarven strength. With both hands, he swings his axe as hard as he can and strikes the creature squarely in the lower body. The Spawn leader staggers backwards. Unable to put weight on its injured leg, it finally stumbles to the ground. As the creature shakes off the blow and attempts to get to his feet again, it looks up to see Royal W, his axe held high. The dwarven champion smashes the blade of the axe into the prone Spawn leader's forehead, and does it again, and again, and several more times for good measure. The Spawn leader finally stops moving. Almost as an afterthought, our champion administers a coup de grace to the last of the crippled Spawn minions in the gatehouse, then walks over to the Spawn leader's body. He proceeds to chop off the ruined head of the massive creature with his axe, as I order the drawbridge to the trade depot lowered. As the front gate opens, the only surviving champion of Syrupleaf carries the Spawn leader's gigantic head with him out of the front of the gatehouse. Over 24 Spawn are standing outside beneath the trade depot. They all look up and see Royal W standing on the bridge above them, holding his prize aloft with both hands. At the sight of this, the remaining Spawn silently turn and slowly walk away from the fortress. Val Helmethead wrote, Year 142, The Mountain Home. Already the rumors have reached the capital, though no one was certain how. The tales told of all the merchants dying, but dwarves have not been ones to let facts get in the way of a good story. At any rate, the royals had not weighed in on the theological implications yet, but already the old statues were being reset up in honor of Saint Nemo, the only dwarf to wound in battle the demon, holistic detective. Statues with a new, additional engraving. Under the adamantine statue there is an engraving. The Works dwarf ship is of the highest quality. On the engraving there is an image of Royal W, avatar of Saint Nemo, Okad Spear Menace, and Holistic Spawn. Under the adamantine statue there is an engraving. The Works dwarf ship is of the highest quality. On the engraving there is an image of Royal W, avatar of Saint Nemo, Okad Spear Menace, and Holistic Spawn. Royal W is laughing. Okad Spear Menace is bleeding. The Holistic Spawn are making a plaintive gesture. The image commemorates the realization of Royal W as the avatar of Saint Nemo in the year 142. Scream an Idiot wrote, From the right and no pump operator, Scream an Idiot, operator of pumps. Entry 77. Entry 67. Fuck, they be inside. Oh, Harmac, I can fucking hear him and they's getting closer. I'm a bump operator. I don't deserve to die like this. Oh, Harmac. Oh, sweet Harmac, please deliver your faithful ones from the claws of those who chose to Oh, Armak, I can fucking hear him. Oh, he's getting closer. I'm a pump operator. I don't deserve to die like this. Oh, Armak, sweet Armak, please deliver your faithful ones from the claws of those who choose to oppose your shield. Please, oh, Armak, make him yield. The rest of the entry is smudged beyond recognition with tears, saliva, pump grease, and spilled booze. Screaming Idiot wrote, Technical Analysis posted, Brilliant! We should build a dwarven cannon as a memorial to all the soldiers who died fighting the unholy spawn. How would one go about making a cannon? So, you wanna build a dwarven cannon. Screaming Idiot's Guide to Cannonry. Step 1. Build a high-pressure pump. Step 2. Load unsuspecting dwarf into the pump. Step 3. Turn on the pump full blast and watch him fly. Step 3. Turn on the pump full blast and watch him fly. Step 4. Comfort Grievin family. Clean chunky dwarfy residue from pump. Repeat steps through... Step 4. Comfort Grievin family. Clean chunky dwarfy residue from pump. Repeat steps 2 through 4 as necessary. Sirocco wrote, The Journal of Sirocco, 4th entry. Hey, diary! That was some tense stuff. We could hear all sorts of screaming and grisly noises coming from the gatehouse, but we stood firm, and I even got to hold a sword. No, it was actually my chisel. Everyone was really scared because we don't know if the spawn were going to break through. Everyone was really scared because we didn't know if the spawn were going to break through. So I encouraged everyone to have a sing-along of The Wheels of the Wagon Go Round to keep everyone chipper. But no one joined in, so I just sang it myself for a while. And then Royal W came back, covered in blood and carrying the head of the holistic detective himself. No, not that holistic detective diary. He died in battle. It's very sad. Royal W looked a little dazed by the fight, so I decided to start a rousing chorus of "For he's a jolly good fellow," and no one joined in again. Why won't they sing with me, diary, huh? They must be jealous of my falsetto. So I sang it by myself while everyone stared at me in solemn respect. I think it was respect. Oh well, I've just remembered I've got some coffins to build. It might have to wait until they find Holistic Detective's head, though. No, not that Holistic Detective. The dwarf one. You're such a silly goose sometimes, diary. I'd better get going. Lots of work to do. Bye, diary. Hope you don't miss me. Oh, dear Lord. Need a drink after that. Syrupleaf, Chapter 5, Part 10. Dark Days. 13th of Limestone, 142. I take one final look out the front gate. The broken bodies of both spawn and dwarves lie strewn across the battlefield. The bodies of the dwarves, including those visiting from the mountain homes, will be given a proper burial in the fortress. The bodies of the spawn will be fodder for Manuel Calavera's craft works. Wordlessly, Royal W and I walked back into the main chamber. The 60 dwarves gathered in the main chamber, having witnessed the greatest and most terrible battle of our time, look on at Royal W in almost reverent silence. There is no celebration of the victory. There is no celebration of the victory. The fortress is There is no celebration of the victory. The fortress is as quiet as a tomb. The silence is broken by a shriek coming from the western halls. I jump with a start. Royal W instinctively grabs the handle of his axe. The sound of rapid, heavy footsteps echoes from the western hallway, followed by another shriek. Dwarves look at each other nervously. The shrieking voice erupts into cackling laughter. I've done it! It's complete! Onan Birir Amnek, soothed shimmered, the diversion of tribute. This is a dog leather low boot. All Craft's dwarfship is of the highest quality. It is encrusted with dolomite, decorated with dog leather and donkey leather, and encircled with bands of dog leather, dolomite, and limonite. This object menaces with spikes of dolomite, copper, and amazonite. On the item is an image of dwarves in cave spider silk. The dwarves are traveling. The artwork relates to the founding of Syrupleaf by the romantic glaze of the Gate of Climaxes in the early spring of 138. Mystical Haberdasher gleefully emerges from the western hallway, holding aloft a gleaming, polished black leather boot, studded with gems and perfectly rounded small stones, the back seam subtly stitched with the finest cave spider silk. His wide grin fades as he feels the icy stares of 60 dwarves upon him. What's wrong? Why is everyone so quiet? Mayor Bob III decrees that the soldiers who gave their lives to protect Syrupleaf shall be remembered forevermore among the greatest of dwarven heroes. I immediately begin preparations for the funeral to be held the following day with highest dwarven honors. Vox Nihili, Goldjaws, Draconal, and Green Intern are put to work in the forges to create coffins of solid gold for our fallen heroes. The deadly Hume mines out a new chamber in the catacombs below the fortress, which will be the final resting place of the heroes. The White Crane follows behind, diligently smoothing and polishing the walls and floors of the new crypt. Laboring the entire night without rest, Hella Turtle engraves the hero's crypt with scenes from the battle, a battle which the dwarves of Syrupleaf have begun referring to in hushed tones as the barbarous onslaught. Engraved on the wall is an exceptionally designed image of the spawn of Holistic and Luigi's Discount Portal Throats, the influential suitor of the dwarf by Hella Turtle Athelgirith. Luigi's Discount Portal Throats, the influential suitor. Engraved on the wall is an image of an exceptionally designed image of the spawn of Holistic and Luigi's Discount Portal Throats, the influential suitor, the dwarf, by Hella Turtle Athelgirith. Luigi's Discount Portal Throats, the influential suitor, is striking down. The artwork relates to the killing of the spawn of Holistic by the dwarf Luigi's Discount Portal Throats, the influential suitor, in Syrupleaf in the early autumn of 142 during Rithregenesh. During Rithregenkesh, the barbarous onslaught. Engraved on the floor is an exceptionally designed image of Vath Were Echoes. Engraved on the floor is an exceptionally designed image of Vath Were Echoes, the spawn of Holistic, and Kennel Bentrings, the dwarf, by Hella Turtle. Kennel is striking down Vath Were Echoes. The artwork relates to the killing of the spawn of Holistic Vath Were Echoes by the dwarf Kennel in the early autumn of 142 during the barbarous onslaught. Engraved on the wall is an exceptionally designed image of Council Stolen, the spawn of Holistic, and Royal W. Passwheel, the Gully of Groves, the dwarf, by Hella Turtle Athelgirish. Royal W. Passwheel, the Gully of Groves, is striking down Council Stolen. The artwork relates to the killing of the spawn of Holistic, Council Stolen. Engraved on the wall is a superiorly designed image of Fellblade, Pulley Urges, the dwarf, and Elder Wraiths, the spawn of Holistic, by Hella Turtle Athelgirith. Elder Wraiths is striking down Fellblade. The artwork relates to the killing of the dwarf Fellblade by the spawn of Holistic Elder Wraiths in the barbarous onslaught. Engraved on the wall is a superiorly designed image of Lackloss Workfathers, the dwarf, and Fellwindy, the spawn of Holistic, by Hella Turtle Athelgirith. Fellwindy is striking down Lackloss Workfathers. The artwork relates to the killing of the dwarf Lackloss by the spawn of Holistic Fellwindy in the barbarous onslaught. I have difficulty falling asleep on this night, as my mind continuously replays the scenes from the battle. When I finally do fall asleep, dreams give way to nightmares of the battle, followed by a nightmare of the demonic visage of Holistic Detective watching me in amusement. I can hear its voice in my head. Now do you believe that I am real? The heroes Fellblade, Lackloss, and Luigi's Discount are laid to rest in their golden coffins at one end of the chamber. At the other end, a double sarcophagus holds the remains of the other two champions, the wife and husband, Kennel, and Holistic Detective. It is ironic, in a way, that one of our beloved dwarven heroes to fall in battle shares a name with the most unspeakable of demons. Supposedly, the demon itself was once a legendary dwarven warrior before falling to darkness, and it was this legendary warrior of truth and courage before her fall for whom the hero of Syrupleaf was named. The child, Decky, breaks into hysterical sobs during the eulogy for his mother, Luigi's Discount. I wish there was something I could say to comfort him. As night comes, so again do the nightmares. The face of Holistic Detective haunts my dreams in silence. Our military is decimated from the recent battle. The young rustlers Syntax, Spermy Smurf, Swat Jester, and Firos are improving each day, but are still far from being able to take on the sort of nightmarish creatures we have seen at this fortress. Even if they were all to become champions, it's still not enough. We need more soldiers. I put a call out for volunteers, which is answered by Sirocco, Tassid, Alias, and Drakenel. This is still not enough. I draft the glassmaker Mailman and the pump operators pumping Lemma and Screaming Idiot into the military, as our fortress has to this point had little need for their former professions. Screaming Idiot in particular is almost rabidly adverse to his new role, constantly grumbling and pouting and sometimes nearly boiling over with rage. I think that he will make a fine soldier, if he can learn to channel his passion. I order the champion Royal W to begin intense training of the new recruits, who are all outfitted with full plate mail. In keeping with dwarven tradition, they will be trained as wrestlers first, and will be given their weapon when Royal W deems them ready. As the military now spends nearly all of its time training, we no longer have the resources to continue patrolling the area outside of the fortress. The best I can do is station Captain of the Guard, 64-bit Robot, and his lieutenant, Flocks of Mice, at the front gate. There were more nightmares that night. The demon's face, ever silent, watches me. 7th of Sandstone, 142. The nightmares have still not abated. The face of the demon Holistic Detective continues to haunt me. I awaken from another nightmare and decide to take a walk to calm my nerves. The fortress is eerily quiet, as most of the dwarves are asleep. I make my way towards the gatehouse, hoping to perhaps chat with one of the guards on duty to get my mind off things. As I make my way to the golden entrance hallway, I stop for a moment, squinting. I could swear I see the ghosts of the dwarven caravan merchants. I turn around and walk back to bed. 2nd of Timber, 142. The days have begun to grow very dark. I could swear upon Armak that it seems each day has less than 2 hours of daylight now. Many of our dwarves are cave-adapted and are perfectly fine with this, but I still find it unsettling. Over a mug of ale, I ask Vox Nihili if he thinks it's possible that the site of our fortress has been cursed with darkness since the day of the battle. He chuckles and says that the short daylight hours are because of the fortress's remote location and the fact that winter is approaching. 30th of Timber, 142. I suppose it was inevitable that the mountain homes would notice that their caravan never returned. I'm sure that they can only speculate as to the fate of those who traveled here, and I can certainly not fault any dwarf that would not wish to follow in their footsteps. Still, I'd hoped that at least a few foolish souls would have made their way here by now. As I drift off to sleep, again I see the face of the demon, Holistic Detective, before me, and then, for the first time since that first night, it speaks. Or at least, I can hear its voice in my head. I'm coming for you, Jazzimus. I'm coming for Syrupleaf. I can feel the demon reading my thoughts, and then, in a way that is hard to describe, I somehow feel in my mind the horrible sound of the demon chuckling. No, Jazzimus, you are a fool. Royal W did not kill me. I am a demigod. Neither dwarf nor man can kill me. Royal W killed one of my lieutenants. Suffice to say, I was duly impressed by the fight your pitiful fortress was able to muster. But it will not be enough to save you. I am coming. The sun never does rise the next morning. Bobbin Threadbare wrote, "What happened next I will not bother to relate. Better hands than I have recorded that battle, and the fate of those who fought the enemy, but from the perspective of the non-combatants hiding behind the champions, we were first relieved to know that they can bleed and die, and that the greatest of their number could fall, though at the cost of far too many lives. And when Royal W brought the spawn's head for all to see, a great cheer went up among the dwarves. We would never hide behind bridges or walls again. After the battle, we found ourselves with the question of what to do with the bodies of the fallen. Our own brave soldiers would be encased in the strongest and greatest of tombs, of course. But the cadavers of the creatures who fought us had to be dealt with as well. Oh, that we had simply burned them all when we had the chance. They may be terrible, disturbing mockeries of dwarven kind, but they may be terrible, disturbing mockeries of dwarven kind, but they conceal nothing. Their very existence is an aberration, yet they make no effort to hide this fact. The same cannot be said for others. I believe the changes began when the overseer, one Jazzimus Prime, fell sick and resigned from his position. Most dwarves thought that he had to step down simply out of a sense of guilt. More dwarves had died under his watch than any previous, and being responsible for opening the gate may have weighed heavily upon his soul. I began to suspect something more, however, when I came across his sleeping form, laid out upon his desk in the middle of the day. Mr. Prime had been having difficulties with sleeping, difficulties which even our usual ration of alcohol could do nothing to prevent. While even this could be accounted for in a guilty conscience, as I stood there over his unconscious form, a sense of terror gripped at my heart. For Mr. Prime, though showing no other signs of wakefulness, was uttering sounds no dwarven mouth was meant to utter. I can only write a rough translation of how these words seemed to be said. Ja, holistic Mindregif, Wuznub, Ollerknen, Quillingen, holistic Quillingen. A quiet inquiry I engaged in later showed that no other had heard him say such words, and Mr. Prime himself seemed to be growing ever less aware of his own surroundings. From the log of 64-bit Robot, Captain of the Guard. Well, the battle is over. We won, I guess. Shame to lose so many of our best in the attack. I'm being stationed at the gate. Fat lot of good that'll do. I broke my leg training. I'm useless. I have no fighting skill. Best I can do is look good and give people a sense of security, however little and empty it is. Still, can't complain too much. Got to enjoy that onyx door all day. Probably the best thing this fortress will put out. I put in a request with our overseer to get me making weapons, though I guess it'll be a while before it happens. Just a bit, just so I can say I'm not useless. Oh well, at least they're alive. Hopefully I'll stay that way. Time to stare out into the darkness again. Just because I live in a nightmare doesn't mean I have to be afraid. But I still am. Screamin' Idiot wrote, "From the writings of Screamin' Idiot, pump operator, stupid serpent, meat shield wrestler. The military was nearly destroyed in the... Entry 1678. Death stalks us. The military was nearly destroyed in the last attack. The spawn of Holistic Armagh, damn her bloody name, reaped a giant harvest of woe and suffering and pain and blood and the like before they were taken down. Aye, 'Twas a battle that'll be told and retold for generations, but unlike most battles, it won't be told by laughing friends over good ale and a hot meal, a dwarven syrup roast, and broiled pump helmet. Nay, it'll be spoken of in harsh whispers, in the cold and the dark. It'll be a cautionary type tale, something too horrible to tell the little ones. To mention the spawn is an invite. To mention the spawn is to invite darkness and dread into your art and your arts. I heard the overseer, bleeding idiot that may be. To mention the spawn is to invite darkness and dread into your art and into your hearth. I heard the overseer, bleeding idiot that he may be, mumbling about the lack of sun. Some of the fancy book-learned types told us that the sun refuses to show its face 'cause of the common winter. And while I'm no poofty, sky-loving worshipper of the rainbow bat god what loves children, even I understand that the sun is, well, almost holy. Its light drives evil from the heart and mind. There's plenty of evil here these days, and fear. The darkness, once comforting like me mum's blanket, only reminds me of the crawling, pained abominations what even now plot to torment us. Sleeping's real hard these days. Armagh, help me, I need to keep a candle lit with me at all times, but it don't help. I keep seeing things in the shadows, ghosts maybe. Jazzimus thinks so, and I ain't disinclined to believe him. Part of me, the part what be dwarfy, is nearly pleased with the prospect of fighting. I'll learn to fight and protect myself from what threatens me and me fellows, but the rest of me, scared shitless. I'm a pump operator, the best to ever come from the mountain gnomes. I ain't no fighter. Oh, Armagh, I need a drink. Skullbuggy wrote, Entry, 13th of Lime, the 5th year. We beat back the siege. The spawn of Holistic fell under the hammer of our bravest warriors, and we have emerged victorious. I don't feel well, though. It's a victory, I know, but something isn't right. Something's digging at my very soul. Entry, 15th of Lime, the 5th year. My nights have been sleepless. As of now, it is past midnight, and the sun still has not risen. As of now, it's past midnight, and the sun still has not risen in the sky. I sit at my desk, scribbling and scratching words into my journal, most of them meaningless. Sand raiders, holistic spawn. Syrupleaf, it seems, is doomed to fail, and I sit here up in the early hours of the morning, doing nothing about it. I feel useless. I see apocalyptic visions in my nightmarish daydream. I see apocalyptic visions in my nightmarish daydreams while I try to nod off to sleep those things that keep appearing. The spawn. Those horrible, demonic things. They plodded towards the commune, teeth clicking and clacking, a deep burble coming from their bellies and a horrible grumbling in their throats. Their two eyes were locked, piercing, cold gazes. The tallest one. It roared. Its horrible screaming is still ringing in my ears, and I cannot get it out, no matter how. Jazzimus, too, has been unwell recently. I noticed him walking the halls, eyes wide open. His gaze went on for miles. I didn't know why, but I hope he'll be well soon. He is overseeing this colony, after all. I feel sick. I need to lie down. Perhaps I can fall asleep this time. The 17th of Lime, the 5th year. Everybody's dead. Everybody's going to die. It's my fault. It's my fault. Entry, 22nd of Lime, the 5th year. I've finally gotten sleep. For 3 days I've been in bed completely unconscious. I woke up to see the dwarves working, as usual. Did they even notice I was out? Entry, 9th of Sand, the 5th year. Jazzimus has been walking up and down the Golden Hall looking for ghosts. At least, that's what he's saying he's looking for. He really needs to get some sleep in him. That or booze. Entry, 26th of Sand, the 5th year. I'm so thirsty. Screaming idiot is hogging the kegs, though. Says he needs it to get through the day, ya sod. His new position must be really getting to him. Chapter 5, Part 11. The Long, Restless Night. 1st of Moonstone, 142. I decided to check and see how our military is progressing. I don't know whether or not to believe these nightmares, but I can be sure that our fortress must be prepared to defend against another assault when it comes. I hear voices coming from the Craftsdwarf workshops in the main chamber ahead. So there we were in Clapcraft, making introductions all around, and when they asked me what skills I could bring to the fortress, I told them I was a bone carver. A bone carver, and they believed me. I'd never carved a bone in my life before I got here. I was a wood burner for the last 5 years before I came here, but I hated it. I knew they wouldn't need any of that here anyway. True story. I walk into the main chamber to see Manuel Calavera chatting with his friend Orange Soda, the two of them taking a break from producing crafts. Upon seeing me, Manuel Calavera suddenly goes very quiet and turns bright red. Orange Soda just grins and waves at me in greeting. I just shake my head and keep walking. I reach the barracks. Royal W has truly done an excellent job of training the recruits, who've come a long way in just a few short months. I watch as Feroz and Spermy Smurf engage in a practice duel, Royal W barking instructions and encouragement. I think I see something else moving out of the corner of my eye. Suddenly I feel a chill in my bones, noticeably worse than the usual chill of this place. I get up and walk out of the barracks, and the feeling goes. I really need to get more sleep. Armak, damn these nightmares. 24th of Moonstone, 142. Ever since the nightmares started, I haven't slept much most nights. I'm not really sure what the word night really means at the moment, to be honest. The fortress has its active hours and its resting hours, but the sun hasn't shown itself for weeks. I finally fall asleep for the first time in a long while, only to have another nightmare. The demon faces me, its voice addressing my mind. Do you really believe that a few soldiers can stop a demigod? Consider your situation, Jazzimus. Perhaps I'm closer than you think. Perhaps your actions are just making things worse. The demon vanishes, and I find myself in bed again. 12th of Opal, 142. The peasant, Ultimate Quicks, comes running into my study to inform me of the news. The miners of Syrupleaf have struck adamantine. My heart begins to race. Perhaps this discovery will make the entire ordeal of overseeing this fortress worthwhile. We can outfit our soldiers such that they will be truly prepared to meet the threat of any invasion. Then I remember the demon's warning. It had said that it was closer than I had imagined. I rush into the depths of the mines, screaming for the miners to stop immediately. I can be sure that something sleeps beneath the adamantine. That must be the answer to the demon's riddle. There will be no more of that material mined from here while I oversee this fortress. I can be sure that something sleeps beneath the adamantine. That must be the answer of the demon's riddle. There will be no more of that material mined from here while I oversee the fortress. I reach the lowest mine shaft and shout the order to the miners. Rixison, Sewermancer, and the Deadly Mole have already mined out a significant quantity of the material before receiving the order to stop. It's too risky to dig for more, but there is no risk in putting to use that which we have already unearthed. 15th of Opal, 142. As I enter the furnaces to check the status of the production of adamantine arms and armor for our troops, the furnace operator, Out of Print, and the strangest Finch greet me, a glum expression on both of their faces. What's wrong, I ask. Do you need more time? It's not that, Out of Print says. It's just, well, I think it has to do with the fact that the magma from our volcano has to travel through hundreds of yards of frozen earth before it reaches the furnaces. Once it get here, is sort of, well, cooled off a little bit. We haven't had any problems with any of the other metals. No problems with iron. Even steel is fine. But the fires just don't get hot enough to smelt adamantine, the strangest Finch adds. Well, this is just great. Of course, it couldn't have been this easy. Well, what about the ore? Our masons can work that just like they could any other Well, What about the ore? Our masons can work that just like any other rock, right? I suppose so, Out of Print replies. 19th of Opal, 142. The mason Goose Creek carves a series of statues from the adamantine ore. Smuggins, the fishery worker, and Slon, the glassmaker, their own professions not having kept them particularly busy in this fortress, carry the statues down to the crypt of the fallen heroes, where they will watch over the tombs for the rest of eternity. Later, as I sleep, the demon once again visits my dreams. In my head, its voice seems to come from every direction at once. Do you think you can hide from me by refusing to dig deeper into the earth? You still don't understand, Jazzimus. I awaken with a start. It is so hard to sleep with all of these nightmares. 11th of Obsidian, 142. That evening, I meet with Spoonboy, the first leader of Syrupleaf after its founding 5 years ago, to discuss the situation over dinner. This is a stack of 32 superiorly prepared hippo meat barbecue. The ingredients are superiorly minced quarry bush leaves, finely minced quarry bush leaves, finely minced quarry bush leaves, and finely minced hippo meat. Fortress chef Joseph Wong KS has prepared an amazing meal featuring exotic meat imported from the humans, which has been spiced with quarry leaves. Spoonboy, having taken up the art of brewing during the past few years, has brought a barrel of his best ale. At least the fortress can get a few things right, I have to admit to myself. You don't look like you've been getting much sleep, Jazzimus, Spoonboy says. Something the matter? Oh, it's nothing, just bad dreams ever since the battle. Nothing serious. So, tell me, why is Slon hauled... Oh, dear. So, tell me, why was Slon hauled off to jail anyway? Slon, the glassmaker, has been sentenced to 26 days in prison for violation of production order from Bob III. Bob III had requested that he produce a set of glassware. Slon didn't come through, so Bob III ordered him off to jail. But we don't have access to all the resources for a glass industry here, I counter. Spoonboy leans in and whispers, The mayor's like that sometimes. He took a nasty knock to his head during his first year here, and I don't think it ever really healed all the way. I sigh. So, anyway, what do you know about the legend of Holistic Detective? I ask him. Well, as I'm sure you've heard, she was once a mighty dwarven warrior who was eventually corrupted by dark forces. Nobody's sure of the truth, but most agree that the madness started at Headshoots soon after the demons were released from the earth. Some say that Holistic Detective killed all the demons that climbed out of that glowing pit, but others swear that a great demon lord emerged behind the others and somehow took possession of Holistic's soul. I guess we'll never know if that's true. Anyway, what we do know is that things were different there after the demons. A dark cult sprang up in the fortress, and dwarves engaged in dark and dubious worship. Holistic was seen walking across a river of magma without any suffering. Holistic was seen walking across a river of magma without suffering any injury. Just before the fortress collapsed, it said that she would forego the use of her mighty hammer and simply beat her opponents to death with whatever she happened to be holding in her hand at the time. Usually, this would be her brown leather backpack, but a few dwarfs claim to have seen her use other things as weapons from time to time. Bone scepters, masterpiece steel armor, that sort of thing. 29th of Obsidian, 142. The face and voice of Holistic Detective speaks to me again that evening. Unlike the other times, though, this is no nightmare. This is real. I've hardly slept at all for the past few weeks, and I haven't fallen asleep yet tonight. At least I don't think I have. How can I be sure? Sitting in my bed, I see the face before me. I hear the voice. All of your work has been in vain, Jazzimus. The constructions, the mining, the battles, the crafts, all of it is for naught. I pinch my arm and feel the pain. Surely this is no dream, I think. A small rivulet of blood runs down my arm where I pinched it, staining the bed sheets. I'm already here, Jazzimus. I'm already inside your fortress. I walk among your dwarves, and you cannot even see it. 30th of Obsidian 142. I don't think that I slept at all last night. Strangely, there is no mark on my arm where I remember having pinched it. My mind is in a deep fog. I force myself to walk over to the barracks. I'm so tired. The military situation at Syrupleaf is much improved. I guess that's good news. Royal W's training has made several of our dwarves into champions already. Sirocco, Spermy Smurf, SWAT Jester, Syntax, and Mailman have all been given either an axe or a hammer of steel by Royal W in recognition of their accomplishments. 2 of the champions are in the barracks right now, in fact, getting ready to spar. The Hammer Dwarf, Spermy Smurf, and the Axe Dwarf, Syntax, face each other down in mock battle, but something is wrong. Their weapons. They should be wielding an axe and a hammer. Syntax swings his masterpiece plate greaves in a wide arc towards Spermy Smurf, who steps aside and counters by swinging a suit of masterpiece plate mail at his opponent. They may as well be wielding leather backpacks. I feel a bitter chill in my bones and the laughter of a demon in my mind. The color drains from my face and my knees nearly buckle under me. I fight to keep from passing out. Dizzily, I stumble down to the furnaces. Frederick, I'm putting you in charge now. I'm gonna need some time to myself to think things over. I walk away without further explanation, leaving the dungeon master with a confused expression on his face. As I walk through the main chamber, I glance out at the front gate to the east. As I walk back through the main chamber, I glance out of the front gate to the east. For the first time in months, I see that the sun is rising. Or perhaps that's just a hallucination from lack of sleep. End Chapter 5. Part 39, Jazzimus Prime, Intermission. I'd promised a while back that I would post a list of the dwarves and their activities after an update, but I neglected to follow through, so here it is, better late than never. Bob III is the mayor. Rixasun is a miner. Sewermancer is a miner. Manic Mole is a miner. Idols is a miner. The Deadly Hume is a miner. Drassarin is a woodworker. Tower of Oil is a woodworker. Skaw is a carpenter. Murder Mystery is a carpenter. Tinny Turtler is a carpenter. Hella Turtle is an engraver. Goose Creek is a mason. That Guy Bob is an animal caretaker. Gary Con is an animal trainer. Hankor is a furnace operator. I Am Lemon is a furnace operator. Gold Jaws is a furnace operator. The Strangest Finch is a furnace operator. Callisti is a furnace operator. Out of Print is a furnace operator. Eumenides is a weaponsmith. Vox Nihili is an armorer. Green Intern is a metal crafter. The White Crane is a jeweler. Bobbin Threadbare is a jeweler. Jazzimus is a gem cutter. Ilarkul is a gem setter. Bobatron is a crafts dwarf. Where Yaman is a wood crafter. Gerblin is a stone crafter. Orange Soda is a stone crafter. Manuel Calavera is a bone carver. Kurish is a weaver. Slan is a glassmaker. White Cloak is a fishery worker. Smuggins is a fishery worker. Spoonboy is a farmer. Mehoyile is a farmer. A124 is a cheesemaker. Joseph 1KS is a cook. Mystical Haberdasher is a tanner. Steel Lion is a planter. Steelian is a planter. Tag Plastic is a mechanic. Dong Attack is a mechanic. Glob of Glob is a siege operator. Skullbuggy is a clerk. Frederick is the dungeon master. Sirocco is a champion. Royal W is a champion. Spermy Smurf is a champion. Swatchester is a champion. Syntax is a champion. Mailman is a champion. Screaming Idiot is a wrestler. Flocks of Mice is a guard. Pumping Lemma is a wrestler. Alias is a wrestler. Fearos is an elite wrestler. Tassid is an elite wrestler. Drakenel is a recruit. Ultimate Quicks is a peasant. 64-bit Robot is captain of the guard. Recursive is a peasant. And Decky is a child. Since we're between overseers now, anyone who wishes to post a journal for their dwarf, please do so by all means. If you have a question about moods or stocks or whatever, let me know, and I'll try to get you a screenshot tonight or tomorrow. Or you can download the save and check for yourself. Either way is fine. Orange Soda wrote, Diary of Orange Soda, Stonecrafter. Manuel might be onto something with those instruments when I think about it, but I've got a better idea. Something that makes a bit more noise, a little more manly in sound. Something that shows how tough and vicious dwarves are through music and song. Orange Soda is making rock instruments. I call it rock music. Sirocco wrote, The Journal of Sirocco, 5th entry. Hey, diary, it's been a crazy few months, that's for sure. I am a champion of Syrupleaf now. It's like a dream come true. I still remember the snowy morning I was recruited as if it were yesterday. Whoosh, that's a flashback noise, diary. Royal W stepped into the dining hall and rang the bell until everyone was silent. We need some volunteers for soldiering work. As you all know, we've lost some great dwarves during the battle. Great dwarves. And I know they're going to be big shoes to fill, I do. But I have complete faith in your abilities. I know you all have what it takes to be a real dwarf. Those brave souls who raise their hand now will be tasked with defending this fortress from the darkness, trying to break their way through these stone walls. Speak, dwarves. Who will answer this call? Hey there, Fox. I was beginning to think that no one was going to show up. I've been going for about an hour now. Lovely to see you here. We're finishing up the proper part of Jazzimus's chapter, but there's an extra feature that I'll be reading after that. So you've got a little bit more meat for me to go through. But welcome to the stream. All right, so where was I? I will, said Tassid, a single tear rilling. I will, said Tassid, a single tear rolling down his cheek. I will, said Alias from the corner, his head hung, the tragedy of what had happened heavy on his stout shoulders. I will, said Drakenel, stepping forward. By my own hands, if necessary, I will protect our domain to the death. Very good, said Royal W, putting a hand on Drakenel's shoulders, his voice choked with emotion. But we need one more brave dwarf to keep back the tides of evil. Ooh, oh, me. Anyone at all, said Royal W. Ooh, me, over here, me, anyone, just please raise your hand, said Royal W, looking over the dwarves, a steely glint in his eye. Oh, me, I can do it, you're not looking, me. Royal W turned to me. Suffering mudstone. Sirocco, you're a builder, not a fighter. The last time you killed anything was when you stepped on a fluffy wambler. By accident. And, if I recall, you spent the next 2 weeks crying in your room. I love Syrupleaf. I've never felt happier in my life than the time I've spent here. I would die to protect it. I swear. Armagh have mercy, Sirocco. You don't fucking love Syrupleaf. It's fucking freezing here. Monsters are trying to eat us alive. Children get snatched from their parents to suffer Armagh only knows what. And, once more, it's fucking freezing. I'd have called it bracing. Royal W sat down in a chair and buried his face in his palms, and after taking a few deep breaths, he sat back up. Fine. Fine. There's a hammer in the stockpile. Go grab it and meet me in the barracks in 20 minutes. Yay! To Sid prodded Royal W. Can I unvolunteer? No, you fucking can't. I'm gonna have a drink or 20. No one fucking interrupt me. Whoosh. Poor old Royal. He's still a bit morose about his old soldier friends. I'm quite good at this hammer business, though, diary. I almost can't remember what it's like to build chairs and stuff. Well, I've gotta go. Can't let the spawn catch me napping now. Whoosh. That's me saying goodbye and running off noise this time, diary. Whoosh. Mother of fucking God. I swear. I'm gonna suffer like a fatal heart attack in the middle of a Sirocco post one of these times. Just from diabetes overload. And hello, Quinn Wasson. Well, I don't mind a lurker, and I don't think I've talked to you before, but I imagine that if you've been lurking this whole time, then lurking is something you do in general. I'm just pleased to have you in the crowd. Welcome. All right, back to Skullbuggy wrote, wait, my dwarf's a record keeper? And I thought he was just a clerk/manager. Entry 4, Moonstone, the 5th year. I've been observing Jazzimus's behavior rather closely for these last few minutes. He's been walking to and fro, muttering every once in a while, trying his hardest to drive away the invisible demons that plague him so. He shakes with fear, his worried steps haunting the corridors every waking moment. He's most definitely unwell. Yes, with the cold, dark winter months comes a strange air of silent tumult. Yeah. Yes, with the cold, dark winter months comes a strange air of silent tumult. All dwarves silently hoping their... All dwarves silently hoping that death skips over them. I myself have been living in the candlelight at almost every hour. I may as well be the first to admit that I am afraid of the dark. The worst part of this whole ordeal is that I'm starting to hear voices at night as well. I fear that I may be succumbing to the very same insanity that is overtaking the Overseer. Entry 4, Moonstone, the 5th year. Never mind. It was just screaming idiot crying into his ale. Entry 2nd of Opal, the 5th year. The miners have been at it for weeks. I believe that I might as well do my part with the economy by smelting a bit. After all, managing isn't going to put food in my mouth. Then again, not much does around here. Entry 30th of Obsidian, the 5th year. Jazzimus is unwell in the worst way. He's become pallid and shaky, and his beard has grown ragged and unkempt. I fear that he may be sick in the head. He's given the reins to Frederick, though I hope he hasn't passed all of his leaderly traits to him as well. Bit of a mean way to go at the end there. Ooh, yeah. I regret that I haven't been able to find... I was keeping the regrowth save on an old hard drive, hoping to finish it one day, and that hard drive, I'm afraid to say, has died. So I'm sorry that regrowth will never be completed. I honestly had plans for how it would go. Like at the end, there's a witchery ritual that basically mass swaps out various blocks and changes the biome if you set it up correctly. And I think it's already programmed in the pack to swap cracked sand with dirt and grass. So basically, I would set up a massive chain of these witchery rituals to terraform basically all the land that I could see around me into verdant fields. That was planned for kind of a final huzzah once all the quests were complete, but sadly it's not to be, unfortunately. Well, that's the end of Jazzimus's year proper. But there is one more thing that I'd like to get read tonight. Down here at the bottom of all the chapters, we have these various appendices. And if you go through them, you'll see that all these appendices were kind of posted at various times. This one links back to update 40. So this was posted around update 40, and update 40 is the update that I just read. It was Jazzimus Prime's intermission just there. So well, yeah, JBTA is good fun. I'm sorry to say I'm probably not going to play it tonight because this has wiped me out. But yeah, I'm having fun with JBTA too. I'm excited because I'm finally getting to the point that I might have enough infrastructure to start advancing again. Finally, there's just like there's only a few more excavators to build. I keep telling myself until I find purpose that needs more excavators. It was part 39, chapter 40. It's weird, but anyway, yeah. This appendix is linked to Jazzimus's chapter, as it were. So this seems like a good enough time to get it read. So, Syrupleaf, Appendix A: The Gods of Syrupleaf. A lot has been written about the strange and varied pantheon of Syrupleaf. Here you can find some information on these bizarre but powerful entities. Vox Nihilary wrote, "By the way, 64-bit Robot is a faithful worshipper of this demented god. Litost is a deity of the Gate of Climaxes. Litost most often takes the form of a male giant bat and is associated with rainbows, the sky, the sun, day, and children." Okay. Oh, that's quite a god there. It reminds me of that one episode of Venture Bros where they had the guy who voiced Batman on voicing like a ridiculously over the top pedophile dude who shot rainbows. Okay. Kennel wrote, "The Pantheon of Syrupleaf. Marked in underlines and bold are ardent worshippers. Just bold is faithful. Just underlined is worshipper. Then plain is casual worshipper. And in italics is dubious worshipper." Doran, Goddess of Wealth, takes the form of a female dwarf and has 11 followers, the most ardent of whom is Royal W. Nur, the Special Glitter, god of consolation, storms, the rain, lightning, and thunder, takes the form of a male dwarf and has 10 followers, the most ardent of whom are Manic Mole and Swat Jester. Egul, god of the wind, takes the form of a male dwarf and has 8 followers. It has no ardent followers. Moldoth, Purple Inked, the Cave of Color, goddess of mountains and jewels, takes the form of a female mountain goat and has 7 followers, the most ardent of whom is Skullbuggy. Avos Gemtin, goddess of minerals and metals, takes the form of a female dwarf and has 7 followers, none of whom are particularly ardent. Litost, god of children, day, the sun, the sky, and rainbows, takes the form of a male giant bat, has 7 followers, the most ardent of whom is 64-bit Robot. Lumen, the embraced incenses, god of oaths, marriage, family, birth, pregnancy, and creation, takes the form of a male dwarf, the most ardent follower of whom is Goldyas. Atith Poemhummed, god of festivals, revelry, music, dance, longevity, and youth, takes the form of a male dwarf and has 5 followers, none of whom are particularly ardent. Imketh Singed Banners, god of fortresses and war, takes the form of a male dwarf, has 4 followers, and doesn't have any particularly ardent followers. Dakas, goddess of light, takes the form of a female dwarf and has 1 follower, I'm Lemon. Gods with no followers. Ostesh, the sadnesses of silence, god of misery, torture, games, luck, and gambling. And Teethleth Owl curses, the nightmares of twilight, god of treachery. Sarkos wrote, when Nur the special glitter created the dwarves, he wanted them to be in his image, chaotic and maddening, embodiment of the storm. But such an idea reminded Moldoth Purple Inked, the Cave of Color, too much of the despised humans. And as Nur cascaded his meteoritic spawn down upon the planet, Moldoth Purple Inked hacked apart the flat, rocky lands they were to lay upon to create a mountain mightier than all other mountains. This, Moldoth declared, would be called Mountain Home. And the first dwarves crashed into the mightiest mountain and burrowed deep beneath, where they gestated for eons, taking upon the stalwart traits of their cocoon, until finally they emerged, molded of rocky bodies, sinews of magma. Nur was angered mightily by Moldoth's actions, and cursed the mountain the children were buried in, that they would hate the sunlight and be trapped beneath a stone forever. But the mountain was alive, growing in awareness. The mountain home had attained its own sentience, and it stole the curse from Nur and turned it into a mantle of godhood. It called itself Avos Gemtin and fashioned an image for itself of a female dwarf, its dominion, minerals and metals, and its role, the dwarf mother, the mountain home. Pieces of the curse seeped through still, and any dwarf who has spent too long inside will become sick at the sunlight. Diren wrote, Funny, I went a completely different route. Ah, well, who says the dwarven philosophies have to agree, though? Listostians believe differently than Neolites, after all. A treatise on the glory of Litost, taken from the musings of Urist Uzgobavuz. Taken from the musings of Urist Uzgobavuz whilst in Play Place. Taken from the musings of Urist Uzgobavuz whilst in Play Palace. Volume 18. Praise be to Litost, great and mighty. Dwarven kind has long been a race that lives beneath the surface, cleaving soil and stone to our will, and plundering the treasures of the land from Avos Gemtin's very womb. In our race's hubris, we have forgotten much of the mighty power of Litost, eyeing the great light with suspicion. Indeed, if we turn our face from him for too long, when we gaze upon him we are stricken with nausea and disorientation. Too many take this as a sign that the light is evil, without truly understanding. Litost's glory is overpowering and sustaining. How do you think the upper lands become so lush with life? Why only the dwarves and our bloodsworn enemies clamber down into the folds of the earth? Litost was once sealed within the earth, and the surface world was as cold and dark as the deepest depths of our mountain homes. However, long before even the age of myth, a civilization of dwarves freed him from his glowing prison beneath the mountains, and he ascended to the sky, his massive form and the force of his will freed at last. He charged the dwarves to explore the depths of the lands, to free any other imprisoned gods, and to serve as his emissaries to the underworld. However, our promise to him has long been forgotten, but he has not forgotten us. He still exacts tribute from us in his own fashions. Tell me, what is it that every dwarf has in his gut? Alcohol. A true dwarf is so suffused with it that the sacred fumes waft from him in waves, ascending to the heavens to Litost, where he drinks his fill of the vapors. However, too many dwarves have forgotten this duty, sequestering themselves where the fumes cannot escape. So when they gaze upon his face after years in the underlands, Litost takes his tribute, and the interest owed, by force. He strikes them with nausea and forces them to vomit forth all the alcohol in their gut, the vomitus a tribute to him. It is in this manner that he gains his lost tribute, and great movements of dwarves to plunder the dead are considered banquets for him. I myself, as a true believer of Litast, have begun to vomit up my daily meals of kitten steaks and wine as tributes to him, once I have absorbed enough alcohol to keep me lucid. It is a practice I encourage heartily, for I have never been in such good shape. Skullbuggy wrote, of Moldoth Purple Inked, the Cave of Color. Moldoth rose from the ground as massive quakes ripped through the earth. Her eyes shone like finely cut rubies, and her horns made of polished diamond. Her 2 cloven hooves glittered with gold, and her fur glinted in the sunlight. The dwarves looked up at Moldoth and beheld the gigantic being, and Moldoth looked down at them. "Why have you summoned me here?" Moldoth asked, in a voice that boomed like thunder. "Please," said one of the dwarfs, "give us a place to live. The humans have claimed the plains, the goblins have claimed the badlands, and the elves have claimed the forest. We've no place to go." And Moldoth pondered how to help the dwarves and how to create a home for them. And then it was decided that they would live within the earth. So Moldoth took a hoof and drove it into the ground, and the earth did shake and tremble, and, like a miracle, the ground rose into the sky, peaking high into the clouds. And Moldoth turned to the dwarves and said, "This is a mountain. There will be many other like it, but this will be yours. It will be where you will live, where you will die, where your sons and daughters will be born. You may mine ore from within its core, and you may smelt whatever metals you may find, for it is yours." And Moldoth drove another hoof into the ground, and mountains did rise all over the globe. "Thank you, Moldoth," said a dwarf. "Need we know anything more?" "Yes," said Moldoth. "Many dangerous creatures may live within, so be prepared to fight them off. After all, I may have created these mountains, but I have no knowledge of what lies inside." And Moldoth did return into the ground from whence she came, and the earth did seal itself up, much like it did before. And the dwarves carved homes into the mountainside, and as the years went by, the dwarves did create a massive, thriving colony, and it was called the Caves of Color, and it was splendid. And many others made colonies like the Caves of Color, and these were known as mountain homes, and the mountain homes thrived. And those pussy elves and their faggoty fucking trees can kiss our ass because mountains are fucking kick-ass. The end. On the batty form of Litast. The world was not always filled with special glitter and pretty things, with pansy greens and fluffy bunnies. Litast is a creature of the dark, realizes a dark spot in the sky when he manifests himself to the world, blocking out the sun once every however long a solar eclipse takes. For in ages past, when Litast was in the tomb before being freed by the dwarves, he was an angular, leathery creature, and while he was imprisoned, the darkness was freed. But when Litast was freed, the darkness poured back into him, as if into a great vacuum, and the world was filled with light, and beautiful things began to grow, and the hated elves began to worship this beauty, began to envision the sun as a delicate or perhaps majestic creature, when the very concept of majesty and delicacy is alien to the world Litast came from. There is only impressive terror. There is only impressive terror. One more time. There is only impressive terror. When Litast lets his power run free, the light lingers in the sky as the sun. When he wishes to make himself known to the world darkens for a day, and his terrors arise. When the dwarves begin to forget their bondage to Litast, he captured a passing caravan of humans and mutated them horribly with unspeakable deeds, sending them down as Batmen to scare the dwarves from their caves that they may tribute the alcoholic vapors and Litast may sup. I still need to figure out where the children and rainbows come in, though. Uh, Kennel wrote, here's some translations for first names. Doran equals diamond, Nur equals lake, Eagle equals control, Avaz equals mine, Moldoth equals avalanche, Litost equals torch, Lumen equals jest, Atith equals straw, Imketh equals just, Dekos equals color, Ostesh equals mess, and Teethleth equals rumor. Iba wrote, Nielsen posted, the question remaining is what forms adamantine in the first place, and why does it have this strange strand structure? Adamantine was used to imprison the demons in prehistory. This is the actual Dwarf Fortress explanation. I'm imagining some sort of Titanomachy style gods versus demons battle in the mythological past. Edit. Diran posted, that or when Lumen got jiggy with Moldoth / Avuz, not all of the Union became dwarves, if you know what I mean. But that doesn't rule out this origin from the material. Hey, this is pretty tame compared to some real myths. Sarkos wrote, on the dawning of the sky, and lo, as Nur did beat his stone all over the face of the... Oh dear. Take a drink. And lo, as Nur did beat his stone all over the faces of the mountain gods, whilst Doran videotaped, Litost looked down in disgust, and sent the light cascading down to reveal their actions to his husband / wife. But Nur was a quick thinker with a devious mind, and he enabled his metallic payload to sparkle and shine in the light, to glitter, one might say, and thus created the first rainbow. And when Nur leapt back into the sky, he smiled knowingly at Litost, fuming with rage, and told him, I will make the rains now, and forevermore your light will produce the badge of my victory over you, a reminder of how I beat you at your own game. And thus the rainbow to come after the storm was born, a mark of delighted sunlight to the dwellers of the world, but truly a strike of anger by the bat-god Litost, who could do nothing to stop it. On the children of the sky. But Litost was no fool. He, coming from the darkness, was as cunning as Nur the special glitter. He knew that, in spite of Nur's misgivings, his dwarfy children were still precious to him, and he carried them off from within their dreams to the world of rainbows, and sent his own batty children to swoop down and whisk them away during the daylight, when the rainbow was highest and brightest, making the dwarves fear the rainbow, the children revere it. Yet Litost did not harm the children, and they were always returned safely. Litost became as a saint among the dwarves, feared but also revered at the same time. Feared for the harsh sunlight and the terrifying darkness, revered for the love of the children. And at the same time, the symbolism of the act of bringing children to the rainbow was not lost on Nur, who could do nothing to prevent his actions, lest he arouse the suspicions of his husband / wife Lumen as to the true nature of the rainbow. And so Litost had his worship and his vengeance, and became known as the horrible bat god of rainbows, children, the sky, and the sun and daylight. I had no idea this would get as dirty as it did. Darren posted, I thought Lumen was the god of creation. Edit, this is the worst bukkake ever. Crap, for the longest time I read Lumen as female because of the post about Nur and Lumen getting married, so I gathered that Nur would be the sauce of adamantine. Maybe Lumen holds such acts to be more sacred though, whereas Nur is more of a devious god, and Lumen would never splooge on something just for fun. Or maybe everything Lumen's precious seed touches becomes alive, so he spills it sparingly lest it overrun the world. And yes, I agree, this is a horrible bukkake. Diran wrote, sorry for the double post, but I just got done with a grand unifying mythos for the DF worlds. It hardly covers everything and is easily open for debate. This represents, as it says, orthodox narrative. Feel free to ignore bits of it if you'd like when making your own tales. In the beginning, Lumen the embraced incenses cast forth a land, laying the rocky orb into the world. However, his efforts exhausted him, so he delegated the creation of the races to the other gods. Lumen proceeded to sleep for centuries. You may call it sloth, but let's see you may call it sloth, but let's see you make several kilotons of matter out of whole cloth and not want to take a fucking nap. The other gods bickered amongst themselves as to whose children would. Blech. The other gods bickered amongst themselves as to whose children would live where. Sir Prancibald, father of the elves, claimed the forests. Odin claimed the plains for humanity, and so on and so forth. Soon, there was simply not enough room for everyone's creations to fit. Litast, the cunning, bat god of fire and demons, had staked his claim across most of the land, and all of the sky. He had the world in his iron grip. However, his lieutenant, Teethleth the Nightmares of Twilight, struck a deal with the other gods. Litast, and all of demonkind, except for Teethleth, would be sealed deep beneath the living earth, far from the touch of the creations of the gods, and the gods would give Teethleth dominion over the void beyond the skies. The other gods agreed, and Teethleth made his move. Litast was struck down and hurled into a glowing pit with his children, many of Teethleth's servitors falling with them to ensure their defeat, and the world swallowed them whole, bound with the very life essence of Lumen himself, donated in his sleep. Demonkind would forever hate the star spawn, and the factions of hatred would eventually splinter, commingle, and interplay long enough to lead to the civil war that led to the creation of Holistic Detective, the unholy Maw. Soon enough, the world was populated, only a few wretched lesser deities unrepresented. Lumen's sleeping drool rained across the orb, giving watery nourishment to plants and filling the seas. The sacred spit soon gained a measure of sapience and called itself Nur, lake, in admission of its original duty. The many-creation myths begin to branch at this point, if they hadn't already. Doranites say Lumen awoke and had sex with the closest goddess, Doran, and their children became dwarven kind, full of love and love of wealth. And their children became dwarven kind, full of life and love of wealth. Orthodox Nereids say that Lumen took a fancy to Nur when he awoke, seeing himself in Nur's image, and miraculously became pregnant with Nur's child, who would become the first dwarf, and the origin of the first crossbow marriage, once Lumen found out. Revolutionary Nereids believe in the myth of Nur's sole creation of the dwarves, and Moldath's curse upon them to hate the sun. There are many, many interpretations, but for this text we shall expound upon Orthodox Neridae. Orthodox Neridae. Dwarves, being late to creation, were denied access to the lands of the other races, and were turned away constantly. Soon they went to one of the goddesses, who denied to make a creation on the land. Moldath purple-inked. She heard their pleas and created the great mountain homes, the Cave of Color, for them, pledging to become a patron of dwarven kind. Seeing their chance, King Torg of kobold kind, Anansi of the cave spiders, the nameless Steven King of goblin kind, and dozens of other gods scurried into the mountains and caves created in the aftershocks. However, they were met with a new force, Ava's Gemtin, newly born goddess of gemstones and precious minerals. Ava's hurled as many of the vermin out as she could, but some hid deep in the blood of the earth, while others hid in chasms so deep they could feel the heat of the demon pits. This is why monsters lurk within mountain homes and canyons, and yet goblins and kobolds are forced to live half-lives in towns. And yet, goblins and kobolds are forced to live half-lives in towers and caves. The mighty dwarves of the Cave of Color soon made an underground empire, masters of their domain. They soon discovered Lumen's gift, adamantine, and followed it to its source, the first demon pit. Demons, driven insane by their imprisonment, surged forth to destroy all the dwarves had built, but one dwarf stood in their way in the tiny hall that led into the pit. Saint Imketh singed banners held the line, slaughtering demon after demon with his mighty hammer. The hammer eventually shattered, and Imketh drew his sword and continued on. Imketh slaughtered thousands of the Hellspawn, eventually going through every weapon the fort had ever made. Once his final dagger broke, Imketh began to break the demons with his bare hands, hurling them back into the pit as they crawled out. Eventually, Litast himself emerged, looming above Imketh, and dealt him a lethal blow. However, Imketh's final action was a flying tackle into Litast. Imketh's final action was to flying tackle Litast into the pit once more, the flames consuming him whole. His sacrifice was not in vain, for Litast smashed his head against the lip of the pit and fell unconscious for a year and a day. When Litast emerged once more, he had changed, a beacon of light, changed by the heroic actions of Saint Imketh. He thanks the dwarves of the Caves of Color, and ascended to the skies he had laid claim to so long ago, a shining disk in the heavens. Before, the world had been dimly lit by a faint glimmer of the distant gods, but Litast's light shone on the world. This is when Litastianism was formed, a multiracial religion that kindly glosses over its master's demonic origins through ignorance, claims of reform, which have mostly shown to be true, or willful suppression. At least they preach the destruction of the maddened demons and Starspawn. Soon afterwards, the epic legend of Nur's orgy with Moldoth and Avaz and Litast's foiled revenge came to pass. Litast began to take dwarven children to the rainbow, his response to Nur's insult. One in particular caught his attention, a sweet child named Dakath. He was so enchanted by her childlike wonder that he bestowed upon her his dominion over light, and she became Saint Dakath. To this day, she rides atop Litast as he soars through the skies, looking over the world, laughing with eternal wonder at its beauty. The event commonly recognized as the start of reliably recorded history was the creation of Atith Poemhumd. Lumen, growing bored with Nur, decided to have a bit of fun. He created a clone of himself and had his way with himself. Nur, enraged at the betrayal, murdered the clone with a bolt of lightning. Lumen, enraged at being interrupted, cursed Nur and his storms to be unable to move under their own power. Floating heavily in the sky, Nur belched forth Egil of the Wind, his eternal valet. In response, Lumen gathered up the charred, adamantine-covered offal of his clone and sewed it together into a new form, his true child, Atith. Eternally young and eternally partying, Atith is an incredibly common choice of worship among both young and old dwarves. In fact, the party he threw to celebrate his existence is the first commonly accepted event in multiracial history. However, this is not the end of the creations of the dwarven pantheon. I hardly need to tell you the horrible tale of Boat Murdered. However, dark whispers have emerged that the final inhabitant of the fortress, the feral child Dodok Aslumash, eventually became so consumed by her grief and hate that she gained a spark of divinity within her, taking upon her the name Ostesh, the sadnesses of silence, playing cruel games with those she comes across, casting them into nightmare worlds and manipulating the lives of leaders to drive them mad. She wishes to see the entire world flooded with magma, as her forefathers did. Course, them's only rumors. Skullbuggy wrote an excerpt from Why There Are Gems in the Mountain and Other Moldathian Myths by Zog Mengigem, great scholar and archivist. And lo, did Moldath look upon the mountains, and she did say, "This looks pretty good," but the dwarves were not happy. "Moldath," the dwarf said, "while we're glad you made us such a nice mountain, we're a bit worried because we haven't got much to work with." And Moldath was surprised. "Did I not just make you an entire place to live in? I mean, come on," said Moldath. "You can at least be happy about that, you ungrateful halflings." "Dwarves," corrected the dwarves. "Look, I know what I said," said Moldath. And Moldath did sigh and returned to the surface world from her great cavern under the earth. And Moldath did look at the dwarves, who were all so unhappy. Oh, Moldoth, thank goodness you're here, they said, on their knees in prayer. Make this quick, said Moldoth. All right, said the dwarves. Well, the problem is we've not got a lot of things inside the mountain, like, at all. And Moldoth was flabbergasted. Are there not rocks in there? Well, yeah. And are there not minerals in there as well? Yes, there are minerals. And are there not metals even? There are metals, my lord. So what's the big problem? Moldoth asked, clearly aggravated. You've got plenty to work with, and then some. Why can't you just make do with those for Armak's sake? Well, the thing is, the dwarves hesitated for a bit before continuing. All that stuff is quite nice, but it doesn't have the certain je ne sais quoi. Quit speaking gibberish and tell me what you want, said Moldoth. I'm a very impatient goat. Woman goat. And the dwarves did mull it over for a bit, and because Moldoth was rather impatient and was fidgeting with nearby trees, they came out with it. We want things that glisten in the moonlight. We want to have it sparkle all over for our arts and crafts and armors and weapons and instruments. We want, there's no name for it yet, said the dwarves, but we want whatever you're going to call it. Moldoth groaned. Well, if you insist, I can try a little something. And Moldoth did take a cloven hoof fashioned of the hardest diamonds, and cut her wrist open, and blood did spill from her wrist and into the mountains, glittering and twinkling as it fell, like stars dropping from the sky, and Moldoth's blood did harden and settle into the rocks and stones, and thus were created jewels and gemstones. And Moldoth did heal herself back up, and she did ask the dwarves, what do you think? Wait, you mean we have to dig for it? Well, yeah. I assume since you live in the mountains that you could have just dug for them. Come on. Really? Moldoth did grunt as it, look, I'm done doing favors for you topsy-turvy tipplers. Moldoth did then burrow back into the ground and retreated into her lair below the earth. See if I do you jackasses anything nice ever again. And that's why we have to dig for these really tiny clusters of gems deep within the mountain homes. But whatever. At least we get to decorate our bone flutes with tiny... At least we get to decorate our bone flutes and tiny, tiny goblets with them. The end. Sirocco wrote, and if you thought Latas was ridiculous, be glad you're not a sand raider. Oh boy. Kidai, Apihai Shizo Huju. Apihai Shizu Hoju. Uhukoti. Apihai Shizo Huju. Kidai Apihai Shizo. Yep. Apihai Shizu Hoju. Kidai Apihai Shizu Hoju. Ihukoti. Koidai, Kidai, the misty shore of spray. Kidai, the misty shore of spray, was a deity that occurs in the myths of the Big Silence. Kidai was most often depicted as a male mussel and was associated with fish and fishing. Also, my new fortress is called Joyous Rack, and I approve immensely. Yeah, that's quite a name. I can normally get them after a try or two, but some of them... A male mussel, you say? How could you tell? Does it just speak in a male voice? But, I mean, it's presumably hard to tell in, like... I don't think mussels are sexually dimorphic, are they? Hold on, I've got an... Yeah, I know. But yeah. Male mussel. Okay, I've got another browser in my window here. Search up, like, how to sex mussel. Kennel. I'm probably going to get really weird porn out of this. That's just going to be in my search history forever. Okay. Apparently, the way scientists sex a mussel is by they put them in a bucket of water and they see if gametes start appearing in the waters. Gametes. They basically sex the mussels by putting them in a bucket of water and then see if there is mussel spooge in the water after a little while. And somehow the Sand Raiders can tell that the muscle is male. Is it just dripping with goddamn with muscle goo? Is it constantly spurting the stuff out? I mean, it's associated with fish and fishing. I guess that could also double up as a fertility god, especially for a goddamn desert people. Oh god. Oh god, no. Can you imagine if they take communion with that god? Oh god. Hey, little Jimmy, are you ready to go to church? Yeah. It's time to take communion. I've got the bucket. Oh boy. Dear Lord. Okay, well then. Well then, I think on that note, I'm going to call it a night because yeah, this. I was thinking that I would just wrap up the. Yeah, I know we've had a lot of that tonight, Fox. We've had a lot of that tonight. Well, I was hoping that this would go a lot shorter than it did, and I could follow up with some JBTA tonight, but my voice is kind of a little bit worn out after all that, and I'm done for the night, you know? Yep. Yep. Okay, well, so I'm sorry to say no JBTA tonight, but thank you everyone for joining me on this Let's Read. Quinn, thank you for speaking up. It's always lovely to see someone, especially a long timer. Fox, thank you for joining me as always. Carzoni, lovely to see you. Everyone, thank you. And you have yourselves a beautiful day. You have yourselves a lovely evening. Good night, everybody.